Welcome to the Norris Group Real Estate Podcast, a show committed to bringing you insights from thought leaders shaping the real estate industry. In each episode, we'll dive into conversations with industry experts and local insiders, all aimed at helping you thrive in an ever-changing real estate market, continuing the legacy that Bruce Norris created, sharing valuable knowledge, and empowering you on your real estate journey. Whether you're a seasoned pro or a newcomer, this is your go-to source for insider tips, market trends, and success strategies. Here's your host, Craig Evans.
Welcome back, everybody, for our part 2 of our interview with OToole, CEO and founder of PropertyRadar, hosted by Bruce Norris. Let's get into it.
There's a couple of things about power source that beyond me. What's the main power source for AI?
Our grid, our super outdated electricity grid.
Right.
That may not be the kind of power you're talking about. There's the intellectual power, there's political power, and then there's like turn on the lights power.
Yeah, make it work power. Because all over the country they're building these power sources, right?
Yeah, and you'll also see, like, if you're really following this closely, we've got our first AI chip running in space. They can put those in orbit that are in the sun 100% of the time. There's less atmospheric interference with the sun, so they get more power. There's natural cooling because space is cold.
Right.
So like there's infinite opportunities for more power. It's just cost and time. And of course we're trying to reactivate 3 Mile Island.
Right.
We're just about to reactivate Diablo Canyon, which is right where I grew up.
Nuclear. Right?
Nuclear is, and I think nuclear makes a lot of sense. They've got these small nuclear plants that are self-contained. You just drill a mile deep hole, drop this thing in the bottom of the hole, and out comes electricity, enough electricity to power a small town. Like in my little town here, we need 1 or 2 of them, and it power everybody for 50 years. And then when the thing runs out, it's just buried a mile down, leave it there. Like there's lots of solutions for power, but there's going to be a huge race for power because
China right now has 20 nuclear power plants under construction.
Oh yeah,
and
way ahead of us.
We've closed most of ours, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So these are the areas where I think come back. Winning versus losing, but leading. Right? We're not going to lose our power plants. We're not going to get bombed, I don't think, bombed out. But to be leading, right, we need to be figuring out how we generate, more power. Because at the end of the day, if they have more compute than we have compute, and they have the people that can put that compute to work, they're going to lead. We're not. And it is going to come down to kilowatts produced, right? Like that's going to be a big decider in who leads and who follows and who has power.
How do you catch up if somebody's dozens of power plants ahead of you? I don't know how long it takes to do a nuclear plant, let's say. How long does it take to do that?
A long time, especially in our current regulatory environment.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So, but that's where you just need you need leadership, right? You need the leadership to say, hey, this is a imperative. How are we going to do this? If you go back and look at the bomb, for example, when we put our minds to things and really get to work, we can lead, we can be ahead. But it takes a lot of focus and determination, and I think it's super important. It's the right question to be asking.
Are most of the companies aligned with a country or just their business?
If they're running their company, what's the right? So I'd love to say that they were aligned with a country. And I think there's a lot of leaders and individuals who are aligned with the country. But I think, one of the things that we lose sight of with nationalism and tariffs and that kind of thing is that our markets and our companies here in the U.S. are global, right? So, to root for the stock market and root for nationalism are kind of like diametrically opposed, right? Like I don't see how you can do both. If you do, you're a hypocrite. I'm sorry for all those out there who have those two views, but it just doesn't work. We are still the most important market in the world, but as we're throwing out tariffs and stuff, that's fine. They just sell other places. We're not doing the damage we think we are. So, I think there again, you gotta lead by example and by showing what's possible. But,
Joey,
yeah.
you want to?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in. I've been reading a lot about this actual stuff. So one of the things that Sean talked about, where it's going to lead to the extinction of all of us. It's not. Can we clarify? It's not AGI. It's super intelligence. But they're saying that the AGI will lead to the super intelligence, right? And the thought was that AGI was 15 years away. But there's a recent paper that came out that says it's 2027, so it's around the corner. And then the super intelligent one once thought it was going to be 2050 maybe. That's going to be a lot sooner, following AGI. Now, a lot of the leaders in this have signed a statement of risk in 2023, and they've updated it right in 2024. Are you aware of that statement, Sean?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you have signed it?
So I don't think it's as imminent a problem. And I think if you look at it the wrong way, as in like we need to stop or slow these things down, like North Korea is not going to stop. Russia's, like others aren't going to stop. So I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. The right way of looking at it is, how do we develop this in such a way, right, that we can show how that it can be done safely and stay enough ahead of the bad actors so that whatever they develop, like our stuff outdoes their stuff and we can keep the bad actors at bay. Like that's the war we're in. These folks that are like, oh, we need to stop this for humanity arrest. Like, I'm sorry, you're just dreaming. That's not the way the world works. That's not the way humanity has ever worked. We've been killing each other for so long, for so many reasons, mostly religious. Like, just forget that. Like, so I don't understand what they're trying to achieve. It's pointless to me.
So when you were talking earlier, you actually were echoing a lot of what Stuart Russell was talking about. And Stuart Russell is the professor from Berkeley who wrote Artificial Intelligence, A Modern Approach. And he's been teaching for 40, 50 years. And he's coming out and saying he doesn't want to stop, because the question was asked him, would you stop AI right now? And he was like, him and how he could, and he landed on, I would put a pause on it until we could ensure all those things that you're talking about, the barriers, or a way to make sure that humanity's best interests were always going to be at the forefront.
I think that, if you pose that question to me, is if today you were God, what would you do? I might say, let's pause and all get in a room and talk about this a little bit, right? But not being God and not being able to force, I don't even know if God can force everybody on the planet to his will, whatever your beliefs are there, I'll leave to you. But like, even if you had that ability, like outside of that ability, it's just not going to happen. So what's the point in the question? Like we saw what happened. We said, okay, we're not going to sell NVIDIA chips to China. Well, China just developed DeepSeek with old chips that's as powerful as our stuff with the new chips, like, and cheaper. Now they're out building. They've put their whole freaking country around building their own chips that are better than NVIDIA's. We'll see whether they can do that or not. But like one of the things I learned super early on in software was, and this comes back to foreclosures. Just bear with me for 1 second. I had an investor in one county in 2008 offer me $1 million to shut off ForeclosureRadar in that county for 1 year. Right? Because he could make so much money at the auction if he didn't have the competition. And I told him no. And I told him no for one simple reason. Because if I had done that, even in just that one county, I would have had another competitor in that county in months. Right?
Right.
This idea that we are so powerful, whether that's us as the US, us as individuals or whatever, that we can determine everything for humanity is a farce.
Do you think then there'll be kind of a collaborative meeting with the powers to be countries and say, okay, how about we cooperate instead of try to beat each other? What about we get to a safe ending for everybody to benefit?
Well, I mean, that was the idea of the United Nations after World War II, right? So it's a good idea. It's a little harder in practice.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't love the United Nations and where it's ending up on things and the outcomes it's having on things. But that was that was why the United Nations exists, is because we came collectively to that conclusion after World War II. That we come to a new conclusion, or even a conclusion to not keep trying to mess with the United or fix the United Nations or whatever. The only way I think as humanity we get to that point is after we have a sufficient worldwide disaster to bring everybody to the same page. COVID wasn't that, right? It didn't get everybody on the same page. If anything, it caused more division than we've ever had. So it's going to have to be something a lot worse than COVID that gets us all on the same page and gets us to have progress.
Okay, Bruce, can I add just one more question?
Yeah, go ahead. No, that's all right.
So, I listened to the Diary of a CEO, and what he's talked about is the conversation that the CEOs of these AI companies that are having in public are very different than the ones that they're having in private. And it's all based on data. It's all based on safety. Do you think that these companies are abandoning safety in AI because of that race to be first? And would you say that they need to bring some of that back? Because some of those in OpenAI, they're just leaving. They're like, hey, OpenAI is just like saying, you know what, abandoning AI safety 100%. So how would you approach that?
I think they dispute that last claim a little, but I would say I've been in software long enough to know, I've got a release going out today. Last night, we found multiple issues in the release, right? Do I still release it? These aren't safety issues. They aren't, the AI isn't going to tell somebody who's having a hard day to kill themselves. But, this stuff's really hard. And on this scale, and with the questions that people ask, how do I test for what Bruce is going to ask AI today? Right? And how do I think through every possible consequence? We're going to get a lot wrong, right? The question is how do we learn from it? And I think the question is, these things are trade-offs that people that are constantly weighing, right? There's real risk for these companies, right? If they suddenly have thousands of people committing suicide because of terrible advice, or start losing people billions of dollars in the markets because of terrible advice or things like that, those companies lose, right? So there's a safety in the what's good for humanity concept, but there's also safety in these companies want self-preservation. And so do you trust their self-preservation, or do you come in and put a bunch of rules on them? If you put rules on them, how do you do that? Because we don't really know, finally, what's going to happen in every case. So how do you even test for that? These are really big questions that can't be answered. And I don't think, whether you're the CEO or the top scientist on this stuff in the world, like truly making something safe. It's like, how do I make a box knife truly safe, right? My sister's dad wouldn't let her daughter use, my niece, use a butter knife until she was like 13 because he was afraid he'd hurt herself. It's like, where do you draw those lines, right? I gave my son a pocket knife really early. He could have killed himself, like it really is those kinds of questions. And it's not, the one thing I don't buy is anybody who goes, oh, what we need to do is we'll just add this regulation and it'll fix it. I'm not saying there should be no regulations, but I think you have to be really careful with those because there's as good a chance adding that regulation puts us behind.
Oh, sure.
And keeps us from having the breakthroughs that we need to have to lead. And I'd rather have US-based companies, right? And the US government, having more breakthroughs than other countries than not. We're constantly dealing with the privacy thing because we make public records data available to investors and others to go reach out to homeowners. And these privacy laws keep cracking down on what a California company or a US company can do with data. But they're not cracking down, and they can't crack down, and they will never crack down on the real source of the problem, which is, actors in North Korea using phone numbers to call your mom and steal $10,000 from her. And that's why they're putting in place these rules, but these rules don't apply to the bad actors. They only apply to the good actors, and they're adding, billions of dollars of costs to the good actors who aren't the ones spamming you, right? And have zero effect on the bad actors. It's, some of this stuff just becomes really super misplaced and doesn't understand the world that we live in today.
Well, that's going to do it for part 2. Please stay tuned next week as we finish up our interview with Sean OToole, CEO and founder of PropertyRadar.
For more information on hard money loans, trust deed investing, and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For more information on passive investing through the DBL Capital Real Estate Investment Fund, please visit dblcapital.com.
The Norris Group originates and services loans in California and Florida under the California DRE license 01219911, Florida Mortgage Lender license 1577, and NMLS license 1623669. For more information on hard money lending, go to thenorrisgroup.com and click the hard money tab.